Welcome to the Fantasy Syndicate Podcast with your hosts, Joshua Poniatowski and Alex Taylor. Let's talk football.
Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Syndicate Podcast. My name is Joshua Poniatowski. As always, I'm here with the amazing co-host, Alex Taylor. What's going on, Alex? How you doing today?
Not feeling too amazing after that brutal week one. All my teams are in shambles, but that's part of the fun, right?
Yes, and we're excited. Week one's in the books. We got so much content to talk about. Talk about week one overreactions. We're going to talk about waiver wire ads, trade targets, who not to add from the waiver wire. So maybe some waiver wire traps, and some briefly, as always, news around the league. So what you got for us, Alex, about news around the league?
Yeah, so obviously just after week one, most of this news is just injury related, which was pretty bloody out there for week one. The big one, Puka, re-aggravating his knee that caused him to miss some time during training camp. He did actually go officially on the IR, so we're looking at minimum 4 weeks, and then after that we'll kind of just have to see what happens. Jordan Love sprained his MCL, but he is not going to the IR, so hopefully under 4 weeks. That's kind of the the mindset there. T. Higgins still missed week one. Schefter reporting already that he's probably not going to be week two. It's a hamstring thing. Who knows? Who knows if that's contract related or if that's just him, actually being some pain. Njoku did sprain his ankle. We're kind of we don't know if it's high or low yet. The current status is just week to week. We'll kind of have to see what goes on there. The only news that was really not injury related is right before the game, Tyreek Hill down in Miami did get pulled over, put in handcuffs, put out on the sidewalk, cameras all over the place. Then he gets out there on the field, scores a huge touchdown, and does a great handcuff celebration. Did you get to catch that, Josh?
Crazy. I did, yeah. That was crazy to see. It was funny as well. So yeah, I mean, real unfortunate event with all those things going down. But yeah, that I think he handled it pretty well by maybe throwing that up. I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah,
I love the trolling. That was pretty high tier trolling right there. So gotta respect that.
Yeah. So that's the news, quick and short. We got a lot to talk about. So we're going to jump into week one overreactions. Pretty much, do we think this is an overreaction or not? And we're going to kind of give our thoughts on this. So number one, we're starting with talk of the town on Thursday Night Football. Isaiah Likely outscored Laporta, McBride, Kelsey, Andrews, Kincaid, and Ingram. If you combined all their points, almost every top tight end that was drafted scored less than 10 points. Is the tight end position just cooked this year?
Man, I don't know. Yeah, it was tough because going into this, you're like, man, this might be like the first year in like forever that we actually have like a deep tight end class, and then they all just way underperformed. Nobody was really all that involved. They were all just kind of like dink and dunk, couple catches, nothing crazy on the yards. But I think there's brighter days, brighter pastures ahead. We just got to have a little bit of faith. I'm not trying not to freak out too early about the tight end position. Josh, do you know how many wins the Bengals have had in the first 2 weeks of the season under Zach Taylor? This is year 6 of Zach Taylor, by the way.
So there had to have been at least 6 games. So I know they're not 6-0.
It's 11. 11. First two weeks. So weeks 1 and 2
okay, gotcha.
of the last six years. So it's we haven't gone, we haven't had the 12th game, but 11 games.
So I mean, I'm gonna be generous. I'm gonna say 6-6, 500. And maybe it's Burrow's time. Maybe not. In between there. So 6-6. What is it?
Great guess, but no. The answer is 1. In Zach Taylor's tenure with the Bengals, he's 1-10 in the first 2 weeks of the season. Sunday they just looked like poop going out there against the Patriots that nobody thought was going to be relevant at all. Joe Burrow was QB 27 on the week, threw for just 164 yards, no touchdowns. Jamar Chase got involved a little bit, 6 catches for 62, but nothing exciting if you're drafting him in the first round. We still don't know what this Higgins status is going to be. It's all complicated. I don't know what to make of them. If that's like, maybe that's a promising sign that they're going to get on track, but I don't like it. I don't like that they suck every year coming out of the gate. I don't know what your thoughts on it are.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to figure it out. They usually do. I remember last year trying to trade for Burrow and Chase because they started very similarly. Like the first couple weeks of the season, they were terrible. You lose faith in your players somewhat quickly, but I wasn't able to get it done. But yeah, I think they're going to figure it out. Obviously, they're the Bengals. Joe Burrow is a great quarterback from what we've seen, unless he turned into Daniel Jones overnight, which I find unlikely. They'll figure it out as time goes on. I think that is an overreaction, but don't give up on that group if it happens again next week. So, yeah. So Kirk Cousins, talking about quarterbacks. He was a statue in the pocket. The Falcons still look like the Falcons. However, this might have been due to the front four, right? When they play a strong front four, maybe Kirk can't move around as much, have as much time, not feel as comfortable. Maybe Michael Penix is going to be starting sooner than later, even though they just paid Kirk hundreds of millions of dollars. What do you think? Overreaction or not?
Well, I think what I'm most concerned about is them kind of downplaying his injury status. They're saying the Achilles is fine, but yesterday they only played. One of Kirk Cousins' greatest attributes is going playing under center and doing play action. He only did under center and 2 snaps the whole game, and there was very little play action there. It was all out of the shotgun. So I think it's like you don't bring in Kirk Cousins, and then it's like either they're downplaying the injury and they're trying to purposely, calling plays to prevent that injury, or they're just trying to do like a square peg and a circle hole situation, and they're taking someone great at under center snapping and putting him back in shotgun. So either bad coaching or injuries still in play. Either way, I don't love it.
Yeah, I'm worried as well about the Falcons. So that's why I faded all their players except for Bijan. So. That's how it works.
Pitts did sneak out that touchdown though, but overall, Week 1 in the NFL was a tough day for just a lot of offenses. We saw a lot of bad performances by quarterbacks. Only 2 quarterbacks ended up with 300 plus yards passing. That was Stafford and Tua. So, which was the fewest amount of the last time we had only 2 quarterbacks with 300 plus in the opening week was 2005. So 19 seasons ago. We haven't seen an offensive output performance that badly. Josh, do you think that's a trend, or do you think everyone kind of gets back on track with the new condensed preseason? You think they just need a little bit more time to work out the kinks?
Yeah, I mean the offenses are gonna figure it out. Historically, over the past 6 years, Week 1 touchdowns have been decreasing significantly. It was about 5 years ago, around 60, I want to say, Week 1, and progressively has decreased almost 10 touchdowns a week, each year. This year we were down to 36 touchdowns in Week 1, which last year I think there was 37. So it is happening because the off season's cut shorter. People are not playing their starters. Defenses have it figured out earlier on. So this is fully expected as far as, Week 1 output. Don't overreact. Offenses are going to figure it out, and, they'll be back to normal in a couple weeks. Yes, you got to have faith for sure. So again, talking about more quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson looked amazing for the Browns. Nope, I'm joking. He went 0-10 on 15 plus yard passes. This is the worst game that has ever been tracked in NFL history. So not just in the StatCast era, but in NFL history. Bryce Young threw an interception on his first play of the year. Literally his first pass was a pick. Then he proceeded to go 13 and 30 and threw another pick. Panthers and Browns seem to be terrible. Is owning any player on that team a bad idea? What do you think?
Maybe. I don't know. I feel so, well, Deshaun Watson I do not feel bad for. Bryce Young, I'm I was looking for that redemption arc, first round overall. Then he crashed and burned. I was kind of hoping maybe he even though he's in my in the Bucs division, I don't want it to be that bad. But man, they both looked terrible. And
So
I don't
bad.
know. It wasn't like they were the receivers were dropping passes. Like the receivers were doing their job. I mean, Deshaun Watson had Amari Cooper a couple times and just missed him. Bryce
A
Young
little
just
bit long.
was just like floating things like all over the place. So I don't know. I would say those two with I know we're doing overreactions, but those two offenses looked rough.
Yeah, they didn't look very good. Yeah.
But one of the big things, we kind of talked about how there wasn't a lot of passing, only the 300-yard passing quarterbacks. So rushing quarterbacks actually reigned supreme week one. The top 5 scoring quarterbacks, 4 of them are what you would classify as a rushing quarterback. Yeah, Josh Allen, Jayden Daniels, Richardson, and Lamar Jackson, all in the top 5. The only kind of not rushing quarterback in there is my boy Baker with his 4 tutties. But I know Josh, you've been a proponent of the rushing quarterback for a long time. Are you feeling vindicated right now?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like quasi quarterbacks, you have the upside of rushing if they don't get it done through the air. So, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why I like rushing quarterbacks so much, because of that. So, yeah, again, I think quarterbacks will figure it out, but that's why you draft a rushing quarterback in case they have a game where they're not able to get it done through the air. So they rely on, essentially their feet, which they feel comfortable doing, right? Most of these rushing quarterbacks feel much more comfortable running the ball than throwing it, maybe with the exception of Josh Allen, but still he figures out a way to get it done.
Yeah.
QB1 this week. It hurt me to kind of see it. I'm glad the guy did well, but that's it wasn't what I was expecting. He's on track for sure to score 15 touchdowns on the ground this year after 2 in week 1. So
yeah.
Talking about running backs now, these are guys who average in week 1 20 opportunities, right? And everybody on this list we knew was going to do this. Najee Harris, Jerome Ford, Ramondre, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard, Brian Robinson Jr., Mixon, and James Conner. Are these all workhorse running backs after week 1? Can you confidently put them in?
I don't know about confidently, but it kind of gives credence to the people who kind of maybe want like more zero RB, or at least like maybe like a hero RB. Because I mean, all of these guys are not kind of your top 5. Most of them aren't even top 10 of like from a draft ranking perspective. They're all kind of like in that late teens, early 20s range. So you got good value there. I mean, at least week 1. I mean, you got to figure out kind of what the defenses are looking like. Truly, we're kind of we're drafting based on like last year's defensive stats. So we're kind of getting a gauge of kind of what defenses are tough and not. So it was pretty impressive. Some of those guys, Ramondre looked like a beast. Walker looked like a beast. Got a little tweak there at the end. Brian Robinson was running hard. So yeah, there's some impressive performances yesterday or Sunday.
For sure. So staying on the running back train, Rachaad White, Zamir, Derrick Henry, are they in a split backfield right now, right? Like White got 21 opportunities, Bucky got 12 opportunities, ETN got 15 opportunities, Tank got 12, Zamir got 15, Alexander got 12, Derrick Henry got 15, Justice Hill got 9. Like I feel like that was the biggest shocker. Granted, Hill's 8 of those were targets. Little worrisome for some of these, guys that people spent some draft capital on, and they look like they're in a split backfield. What do we think about that?
I mean, Derrick Henry, I'm not too worried about. I mean, they were down pretty early in that game, so that's kind of game script there. I would say, and then Bucky looked really good as a rookie for Rachaad White. Rachaad White still proved his had 6 catches, so still looked great in his role. Which is kind of that's what his strength really is. I would say the one that kind of surprised me the most was Tank Bigsby getting 12 against ETN's 15. That was kind of one I didn't really see coming. So I'm a little like, oops, I definitely still have some ETN action. So that's the one I'm kind of like monitoring and most curious about. But then, I know you've been a big Zamir White guy, and so Alexander getting 12 was a little surprising.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, 6 of those were passing. I think it similarly had to do with the game script. I still think Zamir is the guy, regardless of, some coach talk that's been going around right now with Antonio Pierce. So we'll see. Hopefully that pans out as the season goes on. Yeah, because I was definitely high on Zamir where he was going in the draft. And yeah, Derrick Henry for sure. That he's going to get way more touches. It was all game script. I'm a firm believer of that. But yeah, Tank and ETN. That is for sure
Plus,
worrisome.
ETN had that rough fumble into the end zone, which totally flipped the game for the Jags. I felt pretty bad for him because the Jags were looking like they were crushing the Dolphins, and all of a sudden, running in the end zone, loses it. Next thing you know, Tyreek's going 80 yards the other way, and it's just like, what just happened to this game? So,
yeah. So maybe it had to do with the game and him just being like, listen, you can't be doing this. We're gonna show you sit for a little bit and then get back in there. But yeah. All right. So the last overreaction we have is Arthur Smith. Is he the same person? So I got some data for you, Alex.
Okay.
So Pickens ran a route on 76% of Justin Fields' dropbacks, and he was viable, right? Pickens was viable.
Yeah,
and he seemed like the only viable,
nothing.
Wide receiver. Yeah. However, the Steelers ran 3 tight end sets and or 4 tight end personnel sets for 22 of the 69 snaps that they had, which is just crazy.
What a
Cordell
psychopath.
Patterson also got 4 touches. So just Arthur Smith is just doing Arthur Smith stuff in Steeler Nation. So
we just can't escape him. He really is the fantasy terrorist. He won't
everywhere.
go away. I don't know why, why Mike Tomlin brought him in. I don't know. It's rough.
I don't know either. Yeah. So I don't think that's an overreaction. I think that's Arthur Smith. We saw it all last year. So yeah. All right. We're jumping into waiver wire targets. Again, these are the guys that are currently available on over 50% of leagues. Some are up to 90% available in leagues. Consider your team, consider, how your team is built. This list, again, are just some targets to prioritize. Some of these maybe be deeper targets. Some of them maybe not as deep. But again, prioritize based off your team. Don't just say, okay, I'm taking the first guy off this list. You need to identify what your team needs the most. And of course, go with your gut, right? What you feel comfortable. So Alex is going to run through the list, and then we're just going to talk about a handful of these players, not all of them, but a handful, and why we like them as our targets. So who you got for us, Alex?
Yeah. So just real quick, some of your top guys, obviously Isaiah Likely looked amazing Thursday night game. J.K. Dobbins looked really fresh for the Chargers. Jaleel looked really good for, in Denver as the kind of number 2 option there. With Puka going down, you might look at either Tyler Johnson or Demarcus Robinson and kind of see who fills that number 2 wide receiver role. A lot of my Bucks looked really good and really promising. You could do Bucky Irving, the young rookie running back, Jalen McMillan, even Baker himself, Zach Charbonnet if Kenneth Walker ends up having to miss time. But he even looked good just with what touches he was getting. Tank Bigsby we're talking about if he's still maybe on the waiver wire. Rashid Shaheed, Jeff Wilson Jr., Brandon Cooks looked good, had a touchdown for the Cowboys. And then one other kind of surprising one, Josh. What if I told you that there was a receiver out there who was top 4 in targets, top 4 in red zone targets, and got 31.6% of his team's targets? I feel like you'd be pretty excited about that player, right?
Absolutely. Opportunities usually lead the production. So yeah, that sounds like somebody I would like to have on my team.
Well, surprisingly enough, that man is WanDale Robinson on the New York Giants. He didn't do a lot with all those targets, but they were there. And he does have to deal with Daniel Jones himself, who, fun fact, since signing his big contract, has thrown more pick sixes than touchdowns to his own receivers. So I'm not saying he's someone I'm freaking out about, but he's interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Scamdale Robinson. I feel like he's just taking targets from neighbors, but you never know. He could be, one of those breakout wide receivers that we see this year. But yeah, being on the Giants team, deeper leagues worth maybe keeping an eye on, right? As time goes on, or if it's a deeper league and you just had the slot, I'm definitely picking them up from an opportunity standpoint. Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely want to talk about Isaiah Likely. I feel like this is, mostly talk of the town right now because of what he did. So the Ravens ran 53%, 12 personnel sets, which are 2 tight end sets, which means Andrews and Isaiah Likely were heavily a part of the game script, which is typical for the Ravens, right? Run predominant offense. Andrews had 59 snaps with 64% route run, and Likely had 53 snaps with 66% route run. Lamar did throw 41 times this game, which has only happened one time in 2023. This was, of course, due to the game script. I wouldn't necessarily say that Likely is tight end 1, right? But what I would say is it's looking much more closer that Likely and Andrews are both tight end 1s. And based off of who gets the targets that week, it could be split on who's getting the production. So he's definitely worth an ad, especially if Andrews goes down. Like, the upside is insane in the tight end position after we saw what happened in week 1. But those stats are a little concerning for Mark Andrews. I just think it's more of a split tight end 1 situation. So you got to at least have him rostered if that comes to be true.
Yeah, I mean, no, he's an auto, like a mandatory waiver wire ad. I mean, a couple of these guys are. I mean, if Bucky Irving's sitting there, I think, a rookie putting up 70 yards in his debut is pretty impressive. I think that's mandatory waiver wire ad. You got to take one of the LA receivers, just that's a gamble. If you're a Tyler Johnson or Demarcus Robinson guy, that's really up to you. One of them is going to, ascend and take some of those targets. I mean, Kupp can't have 21 targets again like he did the other day, but I mean, it was amazing if you're a Cooper Kupp owner.
Yeah.
But I mean, I thought Tyler Johnson looked really good. For a journeyman guy, former Buccaneer, but he looked pretty good. So I mean, I would probably lean towards Tyler Johnson, but you can't rule out Demarcus Robinson too. And one of them has to, take that vacuum of when now that Puka's gone. So
yeah, I mean, if you're in a PPR league, one of these 2 guys need to be added. Robinson is typically a part of the game script already, is that slot role. So he saw a 92% snap count, but when Puka got injured, Tyler Johnson came in, and he had 7 targets for 79 yards. So I mean, I think having one of at least either of them is good, but you need to pick up one of these guys in the PPR league, especially with some of these, handcuffs that we handcuffed that weren't really handcuffed, and not necessarily relevant in week 1. So yeah, I think one of those 2 guys need to be picked up for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think those were the main ones that you really should be looking at. Again, we listed all of them, so kind of use your best discretion based off of your team. But yeah, those are, I think, the main ones we need to shoot for. All right, so those were the waiver wire guys that we like. However, these are some waiver wire traps. So these are guys that maybe people have been talking about adding in your league, or maybe you're thinking about adding. I think we both think these are not good options to spend your fab dollars on, or even a waiver claim on. So Alex, go ahead and get started for us. What you got?
Yeah, the first guy I'm not buying hype on is going to be Alec Pierce. On the Colts, had a great game, 3 catches for 125 yards and a touchdown. I'm sure anyone looking on the waiver wire is probably pretty excited for those kind of numbers. But I just don't think it's sustainable. Those 3 catches were on his only 3 targets. He only had a 15.8% target share. AR completed under 50% of his passes. He is just so volatile, Richardson. Like, he just only throws bullets. He's really inconsistent. I just don't think he's consistent enough, and Alec Pierce isn't getting enough reliable targets to mimic this kind of performance very frequently.
Yeah, I mean, it's the deep ball. We do know like AR likes throwing the deep ball, but it's going to be boom or bust games for sure. So I agree. Like, not worth a waiver pick for somebody you're probably never going to start in your lineup unless you're in a crazy deep league.
Yeah.
The guy I got is Alexander Maddison. I'm still on that Zamir White train. Alexander Maddison, he got 6 targets. He only had 5 rushing opportunities, but one of those targets was a receiving touchdown. So his numbers are going to be inflated. People are going to see, hey, might be a split backfield. Maddison has the wide receiver up or the receiving upside, but again, I still think Zamir's the guy to own on the Raiders, and I'm not adding him in any of my leagues.
That Maddison touchdown was nice though, but yeah, I don't think he becomes a tried and true producer. Lastly, I just got from the Monday night game, Alan Lazard. He had a great game. 9 targets, 6 catches, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns. On paper, I think, if you actually watch the game, I don't think it's that reproducible. One of his touchdowns was a classic Rodgers play where the D-line jumps over. The flag's already out. He's got that free play. Rodgers loves that. He just chucks it deep. Lazard, they got that connection. Lazard literally just running a fly, and it worked out, which, I mean, great for them, but you don't want to bank on that. And then his other touchdown was with Tyrod Taylor in the straight garbage time. It was I think it was 1 minute left on the clock, basically. So sure, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns looks awesome on paper. They're both just so ticky-tacky that I don't think you rely on that.
Yeah, I mean, he almost took the Mike Williams role, right? I mean, the guy that we thought was going to be wide receiver 2, getting those targets. So it was interesting. Mike Williams was almost non-existent. I don't even think he had 1 catch in that game. So it's interesting that, Lazard kind of took that role. But yeah, I agree. I mean, he was on Green Bay. People hyped him up constantly. He was going to be the guy. He'd have a game like this. Everybody would believe it. And then, it's not something you're starting ever. So I agree completely.
Yeah, I mean, early on in the game, Garrett Wilson was getting all the looks. It was really just kind of like in that second half when it was more security blanket. They're down big. That's the only time Lazard was getting involved. So.
Yeah. All right, so we are going to transition to buy low and sell high targets. So these are players that we feel like going forward right now, they are being overvalued in week 1. And these are also players who have maybe lost value in week 1 that we think are going to do better moving forward, whether that was due to game script or just not securing catches or is not getting the opportunity that they maybe did, or the defense that they played in week 1. So these are guys, and we're going to start off with the buy low list. If it's cool with you, Alex, I'm going to go ahead and get started for the first one.
Okay.
So for buy low, the guy I like is Michael Pittman. He saw 42% of his team targets, which, to put that into perspective, last year, I think CD was number 1 with 30% of the team targets, or 31, somewhere around there. So 42 is just insane. He's going to be a PPR machine just like he was last year, as long as that continues to happen. He's the clear wide receiver 1 in Indy, and he was overshadowed, of course, by wide receiver 2, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, he's a buy low target for me. I'm trying to get him if somebody is already like, oh no, I'm worried about AR. I'm worried about him not, getting, catches, because he's just target machine. So yeah.
Yo, Richardson is wild. I watched that game. He only throws bullets. It's like there is zero touch in his passes. So, I mean, great from a fantasy perspective because he is just slinging it out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that target share is pretty insane.
Bonkers.
A guy I kind of like as a buy low. I mean, we kind of talked about the tight ends not really producing the way that we thought they would going into this season. Yeah. So I mean, there's probably a lot of tight ends that are buy low options. But I like Trey McBride. I feel comfortable about him. He had a 29% of his team's targets. 9 total targets, 1 red zone target. And that Cardinals defense looks pretty bad. I think most of their games are going to have to be high scoring. I think Murray has to figure it out. With McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr., I think that offense gets a little bit more productive going forward. So if you can kind of catch someone upset with Trey McBride's first game, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, Trey McBride, my number one. I've already actually sent a couple offers out for him, so I'm definitely trying to acquire McBride. This next guy, again, I'm not going to spend too much time on him because I already spoke about him, but Jerome Ford, the window is closing to buy him low. He was saved last week with a touchdown, which, inflated his value a little bit this week, but he is the undisputed running back one. The Browns can't suck that bad every week. And there's going to be less difficult run defenses, right? We talked about the Cowboys. They got Michael Parsons. They got Dexter Lawrence. Like, they got an elite front four, so they're going to see less resistance in that run game, which I think hopefully will help Deshaun Watson out. But got to get him while you can. Again, I think week 2 it's going to be too late to get him for a low value after that.
I don't know, man. Those Browns look rough.
I know.
Another guy I like, I'm trying to target, is DK Metcalf. He didn't straight goose egg, but he didn't look great with 3 catches for only 29 yards. Someone drafted as a clear wide receiver 2. I think you probably get someone pretty upset if they have DK Metcalf. But here's the deal: he had a deal with Patrick Surtain following him on all but one route. 24 out of 25 routes, he had Patrick Surtain right on his hip. So that's a top, if not one, that's top 3 cornerback in the NFL.
Easy.
So there's not going to be many games that are going to be that tough for him moving forward. So that's someone I'm trying to see if I can target and see if I can snag somewhere.
It's a great target. I love that one. Next I got is Kyren Williams. So Blake Corum was non-existent. So if you have him on your bench, I mean, I'm comfortable dropping him, but he wasn't even a running back too. Kyren saw 91% of the backfield opportunities. Ronnie Rivers was running back too, and if you think Ronnie Rivers is going to take the starting role from Kyren, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
He was super inefficient, unfortunately. He only had 2.8 yards per attempt. But again, he played one of the toughest run defenses in the league with Detroit's front four. Arguably, they could be number 1 in the league. So I think he's being undervalued at the moment because of that. And maybe that punt concern is still lingering around, even though the data doesn't tell us that. So I think, he's definitely somebody to try to target and try to acquire for maybe somebody who doesn't have him as their running back 1 and isn't all in on Kyren.
Yeah, I mean, and the McVay came out and said the reason that, Kyren had such an insane snap percentage was because they had a lot of injuries on their O-line, and the Detroit D-line was roughing them up, and Kyren is a phenomenal pass blocking running back. So that kind of, that kind of was, they kind of needed him to do something other than just running the ball. Right. So, but I think
which is a good
there'll be
sign.
better days ahead. Yeah. They trust him for sure.
Yeah.
We'll pop over into sell highs. Now these are players who had a really good week 1. Who if you have them on your team, you're probably pretty hyped for. But chances are they probably won't be able to sustain that level of success the whole season or more frequently. So if you can get a trade for them and maybe get a little bit more of a proven stud, this is maybe somewhere but you can try to make that happen. Mine I'm going to go with is Jayden Reed for the Packers. He had a great game on that Friday night game down in Brazil, but that turf was rough. There was people sliding all over the place. There's a lot of broken plays on Jayden Reed's, big touchdown was just the DB just went right past him and he just had a straight line to the touchdown. That's he only had an 18.8% target share, which is it's fine, it's nice, but you can't be expecting that amount of points on that level of a target share. So I just don't think he's going to sustain that. Plus, Jordan Love's now gone for who knows 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks. So I think if you can get value for him, I would be okay trading him away.
Yeah, I mean touchdowns aren't sticky as far as something that they're going to do every single week. There's also a ton of options on that offense. And to say Jayden Reed is wide receiver 1 on that offense after 1 week, I think is just a bad take. So, get value where you can and get maybe somebody that's going to be a little bit more reliable, in that wide receiver role. The guy I got is the guy that you like, and he did perform extremely well. So it's Stefon Diggs. However, he saw less targets and less opportunity than Tank Dell and Nico. He did have 6 targets. 2 of those were touchdowns. And I just think you need to take advantage of this high upside. People like Diggs, like you. So I would be targeting you in leagues. He had 2 touchdowns. He looked good. He got red zone targets. I just don't think that's sustainable. I think Nico, 6'4", 230 wide receiver, is going to be the red zone guy. And Dell is going to get more involved. Again, it's such a high powered offense, but I like trying to sell high on Diggs here.
I'm going to disagree. Well, I mean, one, obviously value with the 2 touchdowns is very high. So if you're just looking for a trade, like I'm sure his value is probably peak, just coming off of a 2 touchdown game. But I don't think he's, those touchdowns were designed plays. Like he was first read, designed for him. So he's very clearly involved. When I kind of talked about Jayden Reed, that was just like a busted, terrible play by the defender, sliding on the Brazil turf. Diggs got actual designed routes for him. So I think it's a little bit more promising than I think you're kind of like letting on. But if you want to sell high, I mean, if you want to sell him, it probably is the best time to come off of a 2 touchdown game.
Yeah.
Another guy kind of talking about high performers, I'd be okay maybe shipping off is Jameson Williams. If you were a JMO truther, you're probably feeling pretty good right now. A guy you probably took very late as just a late flyer, and then he just absolutely blew up for you. So you're probably pretty stoked. But this is a very potent Detroit offense. Laporta's going to get more involved. Amon-Ra is going to get more involved. Gibbs is going to get more involved. I just think value's probably at its height. Not that I was happy for the guy. He's a high prospect for
great.
many years now, who's just kind of been hanging out. So I'm excited for the Detroit offense overall, that he's relevant again, and I'm happy for him. But I think if you're looking to trade, his value's massive right now.
Yeah, I mean, watching him play, I was like, geez, how did I fade this guy? And then I was like, oh yeah, Jameson Williams. I cannot get caught into this. I mean, he looked like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, he literally took that role in that offense. I think St. Brown had the lowest points he's had in almost like 2 years in that offense. So that was crazy. But I mean, if we think JMO is going to be target number 1 in that offense for the future, I just don't see that happening. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a sell high opportunity for sure. And the last guy I got is Isaiah Likely. I know we talked about him being a top waiver ad, but because of the 50-50 kind of split and routes run, also Lamar throwing 41 times, that's not going to happen in the future. They played Kansas City. It's just kind of what the script dictated. He for sure should be somebody that, if you have him, that you're trying to trade away until Mark Andrews either gets hurt or bails and is not a part of that offense. I just don't think he has as much upside with Andrews there. He's a viable tight end, what I will say. I mean, I feel like after what we saw last week, he's somebody that, sure, he's going to get you 6 to 8 points, just like every other tight end that you can expect. But the upside for sure is there, which we also saw. So I'm not saying he's rosterable and startable, but I just am worried with the split, and with him putting up as many points as he did this week. I think he's somebody you could try to flip for some of these guys that are worried about their tight end position, or drafted Dalton Schultz or Turd the Ferg, So
yeah, I think he's an insane trade piece after this week 1. For what his value is of what you drafted him. Again, I mean, he might be on. He's a waiver wire pickup too in a lot of leagues. So you can possibly trade him. You drafted him very late as a backup tight end, and now you can flip him for probably a viable flex player week in, week out. So I think that's a great trade chip to have, considering how terrible all the other tight ends were week 1.
Yeah. Those are the lists, though, guys. That's who we like, who we don't like, who you should sell, who you should buy. Like and subscribe if you'd like to. If not, thanks for just hanging out. If you have any questions, let us know. We're happy to answer them on the show. We're happy to answer them through, DMs or through email, however you want to do it. As always, go steal a championship, and we'll see y'all later.
Peace.